Hi guys, today we're building weather app as determined by the results of the previous poll, which was built 4 weeks ago. And this is the current poll, which means the next video is going to be based on common mistakes of intermediate level developers. And today we're building JavaFX software. So we're going to focus on how to build flexible, maintainable, and ready for extension software. I'll try to focus on these bits a bit more than usual, so I won't be rushing in the tutorial. So I've got a new repository here, and the first thing I'm going to do is add Maven support. Although we don't need any dependencies, I'll just add it so I have the right directory structure. So I like the Maven directory structure. And what else do we need? I think we need the compiler plugin. Build plugins. Is it artifact? And we want to use 1.8. Eventually we'll move on to the later stuff with modules and Java 9, Java 10 kind of stuff. But we haven't introduced that on this channel, so we're going to continue with Java 8. I think that's about it, and I should now be able to run my stuff. First I'm going to create a package. And yeah, before I forget, this poll is now going to be updated because these are the results. So what I'm saying is basically go to that page and vote if you want to see something in the next video. Java class, weather app. Probably guessed what I'm going to do first. I'm just going to start it and see if my environment is ready. I hope it is. New scene, new Mr. Pane. That should just, well, I guess I could add this as well. So it works. The first thing I'm going to do is focus on data structures. There is just one data structure I can think of at the moment. So the application is going to take user input in the form of a city name, I suppose. That then goes to a particular URL, obtains the information on weather for that city, comes back, gives us this nice data structure that is called weather, I'm assuming, and we can then do something with it like show on the screen. I'm not going to be actually connecting to a URL. We've already done that before, I think. So you can use some of that tutorials material to connect to, say, Open Weather API, which is quite easy, I think. And all you'll need to do then parse the result into something that we're going to create now. So this is a data structure, so I'm going to make it final. I'm going to have city name and temperature. And let the ID generate the constructor. So that's about it. You may want to add temperature units because there's more than one eventually, but for now we'll stick to what we have currently. So we have weather. Now we need a way of obtaining weather from somewhere. And that sounds like a service. Everything, if something can do something, that is usually a service type, and you can create an interface for that. I'm going to call it weather supplier. And you may know that Java 8 comes with its own functional interface called Supplier. So I'm just going to extend it so I can pass this thing whatever supplier is expected. But having my own interface means that I'm relying on something that exists in this code base rather than on a different interface or a class in a different code base, even if it's JDK. Which means if something changes in this thing, the only class we need to update is this. It's actually going to take a bit more than that, because we're not doing anything in this interface. We're simply extending supplier, which hopefully won't change. And there's only one function in there, one method. It says get. So this is our supplier. Next, let's add some providers. So instead of concrete classes, we're using an interface, which means everything that expects this interface should not know about any concrete details, which are called implementation details. And it's important because then you can add new implementations like actual weather provider. Currently, I'm going to add mock weather provider, which returns something that's not very interesting. It's going to implement our supplier because our weather provider is the supplier of weather. I'm going to return something that is hard-coded. Let's go with London, and let's go with 14.5 degrees, I think. And that's about it. This class should essentially be in one of the test packages since it's mocking, but we don't have test packages now because we're not focusing on tests in this tutorial. So keeping it here. And then I'll let you implement the actual weather provider. But the rest of the stuff will still work, should work. So we have our provider, which we don't really care about. All we care about is this interface, which gives us the weather. We now have our weather app. Next thing is user interface. The directory where our fxml file is going to be located needs to have exactly the same signature as this package, so that it's easier to work with things. I'm going to call it UI fxml, and it's going to be a vertical box, and we don't have a controller yet. So the UI is actually going to be pretty simple. It's going to have a text field and a label. Label info, so that all the info will be displayed on it. And the text field is for entering search details. So let's load this stuff in. XML Loader. Get class, get resource, UI fxml. We should have a window 400 by 400 and text field, which is this long thing, and label somewhere here, which we really can't see because there's nothing in it, or anything inside the text of that label. So we have the UI, we have the data, we more or less have the model. We need a controller. Let's call it main controller because it's controlling the main UI. And it needs to have access to weather supplier. Now, the interesting part here is that we're not actually instantiating weather supplier here in this class. This allows us to modify behavior of our application, of our controller, without changing this class in the future. So in the future, say you want to introduce some third-party weather supplier, which you can. All it needs to do is implement this interface, and then where you'll instantiate it is probably somewhere here or through dependency injection. But the point is, this class won't change. We need to have a function, a method that handles with a handle on search. And should we pass the thing here? Sure, let's have reference to that text field. That'll be easier. XML text field. Nope, not AWT. I need an JavaFX text field. That one. Field search. Why does it not give me the name of it? It's supposed to. Oh yeah, because it doesn't know what controller is going to be assigned to this file. Okay, that's fine. Because we're going to instantiate the controller ourselves, because we need to pass this thing in. Field search, and we also have another field which is label. So on action, whenever enter is pressed within this text field, it will call on search, which should call this function, this method, which does something. And what does it do? Well, we need to essentially, what we need to do is do this. But recall that we may have a supplier or provider of weather which is not going to give you the result immediately, right? It's going to access something. As long as it's accessing the internet resource, that means it's going to take a while because of various reasons. So what we want to do is have another thread do the work so that our UI thread is clear of this work. If you do work on UI thread, that means the application is likely to freeze because there will be no updates. And in fact, I will show you this. So let's just do something very trivial and naive. We're going to call this on the UI thread, which is known as the JavaFX application thread, in case you're wondering. And we're going to update label info set text weather get city name weather get temperature. Now, in our mock weather provider, we just do this. So it's incredibly simple and fast. Actually, I failed to add the controller. Fair enough. Main controller. New mock weather provider. So this is the only place where you instantiate the controller and pass the actual implementation detail of this weather supplier. Loader set controller. We either do this or can do that. Actually, I'm interested if this will work if I supply the controller construction here and I also say what controller it's going to be so that this thing doesn't freak out. Let's do that and see. So I'm going to say that this is the controller, yet I'm going to say this is how you construct it. Cool, works. Right, so city name, we don't care because it's hard-coded. It'll display 1 and 14.5 regardless of what we do. Now, it was pretty fast, so it was alright. Now imagine, so during the development, developers forget that they've done this thing, which they should never do. And at some point, we actually implement the internet connection to the URL and getting the weather back, which may take, say, some, I don't know, 3 seconds. And if we do this now, hello, the application is frozen. I can't do anything to it until this thing returns. So this is a very bad thing to do if you're doing any kind of UI development. Anything that is not sequential or does not have basically anything should really be done on a background thread, unless you know that the thing that you're doing is incredibly fast and going to complete in a very short amount of time. So this thing is going to kind of simulate the internet connection being slow, etc. And considering my broadband speeds probably be exactly like this. And if we can't do this, then what can we do? Well, you may have heard that idea of threads. I did talk about threads a long time ago when I did the downloader tutorial, where you download multiple things. So what we can do is create a task, which is a unit of work that is provided by JavaFX. And to create such a task, you can use what's called a service. Service creates these tasks and provides kind of a wrapper around them. So you're getting into several layers of abstraction here. And so I'm going to create an inner class. I think it's called an inner class. I forgot my terminology. Weather service. And this is not the service in the sense that service can be an interface, like here. So this thing, where to go? That thing provides us with some functionality. It's not service in that particular case. It's more of a service like an work service executing. I think there's an executor service that is part of JDK. So it's something like that. And obviously you can read the documentation. It's a non-visual component encapsulating the information required to run on one or more background threads. There you go. And it provides us with weather. there's just one function method that we need to implement, which is create task. And for us, it's really just about creating that and calling our weather service supplier, which we can't do unless this is not static. Weather supplier get. How about that? So I've created a task which is a unit of work which wraps around this method, which takes some time. This whole thing is going to be executed on a background thread, and this allows us to do so. So this service starts the thread, manages it, and basically we don't need to worry about these things. So I'll create an instance of our service now. And on search, instead of doing this thing, we are going to service restart, which essentially creates a new task, runs on a background thread, comes back with a result. And there are a few other things that we can implement in this particular task that we're creating. So this thing runs on a background thread, and obviously there is official documentation for it. You just need to read all this stuff. The succeeded method that you override is called on the UI thread. This is very beneficial. You run this stuff on a background thread, which is work. Once the work is complete, the work returns us a data structure. We can then query the data structure on the UI thread and do something with the UI, such as this. So on succeeded, we are going to get value. And then modify the label info text. There's also another method that is useful. It's called failed. If this throws an exception, which it might, for example, city not found or something else, the internet is not enabled, whatever, then you're able to say something here, like label info set text the error message. Something along these lines. And actually, now think about it, I think we need another thing here, because that just gets us weather. It doesn't actually take any parameters. Something that I forgot about, because when you're searching, you are going to be passing some city. We're going to fix that in this tutorial because that's very important. But for now, let's just focus on the fact that we can run this service. So on search, we just do service restart, and I should be able to run this now and not freeze the application. So if I do hello, the UI is not frozen. I can do whatever I want. And whenever the task returns, it gives us the result. So we now have a robust-ish application that actually doesn't work because of this thing, because that's hard-coded. So actually, this is a wrong abstraction. What we should have had was something along the lines of get that takes city name. If you needed to take more than one thing, you could wrap this into another data structure and then say query, weather query, something. I don't know, you can come up with better names. But the point is, it takes something and it returns something, so it is essentially a function. We could have extended a function if we wanted to, if you're really keen on working with functional interfaces. Which means this is now wrong, so I need to do something about it. City name. Actually, I'm going just to pass this thing in. So at least it will display the same thing that I enter. Though this is now going to change, which means I need to somehow provide information from here, so to the service. Why don't we have something like that? That looks like something that could work, potentially. Yeah, I think that's more or less right. Just slightly concerned about accessing this field directly, but it is an inner class after all, and it's short enough to do what it's supposed to do. Yeah, another thing is don't make classes too long, and don't add functionality that is not needed, and that will keep your classes short-ish. Right, so I think that's about it for this tutorial, really. And should you have another weather provider, all you need to do is just add a new class and change this one little line. And the rest of the thing should work as it is. So in this tutorial, we wrote a small weather app, which is essentially just proof of concept. We created a data structure to hold our data, which can be a lot richer, like provide pressure information and various other things that I can't really think of at the moment. Then we created our interface, which allows us to take city name and then provide weather for that city. We also created a mock implementation of this weather supplier. We kind of simulated the delay that may occur during the connection to a particular URL. And then we wrote an XML user interface, which we connected to this controller. Finally, we have this controller, and this is a very important thing, I think, in this tutorial. The fact that we're able to use background threads very easily, and we're shielded away from these concurrency issues, kind of threading issues that we don't want to deal with ourselves. And this should also allow you to do some similar applications like searching for a movie and then displaying that, or a song, as long as you can kind of, because that field search will still be the same, that will still be the same. The only thing that will change, you'll have a different data structure and a different supplier. So you could implement things like search movie by name or by actors. So there are various extensions to this tutorial that you can add. And yeah, as always, the code will be online. I'll give you the link on GitHub. And don't forget to come back to this page. I will give you a link to that as well, so that you can vote on what you would like to see next. Thank you for watching.